Who do we feel better about after watching practice, and who do we think maybe slipped a little bit on the depth chart? It's stock up, stock down. Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Ryan Harings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Really do appreciate everybody helping us build this community up. Thank you so much. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so I wanted to do a show. Now we've had a couple days, go through the roster, and let's do a little stock up, stock down on positional battles, people who I think have solidified either their roles or potentially even moved up the depth chart a little bit. And stock up and stock down is super subjective, right? I want to acknowledge that. This is based on me watching a couple days of practice and talking to other people who are there, obviously reading other reports. Solely not just me, but it's still a little subjective. I get that. And it's also based on kind of what I thought heading into, right? So if there's, for example, Tretch isn't going to be stock up because I was already super excited about him. And what I saw just reinforced what I already thought. His stock didn't really go up in my eyes because his stock is already sky high, right? If you had invested early on the Tretch train, you're probably retiring pretty soon. But that stock is super expensive now. It's high. So he didn't really go stock up in my books because the expectation was already there. It just reinforced what I thought. So we'll go position by position, players that I think are a little stock up from where I came into practice, where I came into fall, what I think the expectations were. Let's start at quarterback. Tyler Van Dyke, stock up. Listen, for me, it was what I expected with the arm is kind of what I saw. I expected some beautiful throws. I expected a couple maddening decisions. I expected to see the arm talent. When he's on, he can throw lasers. He can really fit the ball into very tight windows. The type of throws that defensive coordinators the next day are going to be looking at and just shaking their head like, how are you supposed to defend that? You can't defend that. He made some of those throws. He also made a couple picks, which I expected. But what I didn't expect and why he's stock up for me is I think he solidified his role as number one quarterback in this last week. I really do think he started to take a stranglehold on that spot. But the legs, I've talked about it a bunch of times, so I'm not going to belabor the point. I knew he was mobile. I knew he was based on people I've talked to. He was more decisive with his running and a little more faster than I had thought. And if that's going to be a consistent part of the repertoire, a consistent part of the toolbox this year, he's much more. He's still not a dual threat guy because he wants to throw the ball, but he's closer to that type of ability than I gave him credit for. So stock up Tyler Van Dyke. Let's go to the running back room. This one is tough because there's a lot of guys I thought were impressive. And not just me. Everyone else reads the practice reports too. Tawee Walker, like stock up with like capital UP and 7 exclamation points. Like he looked awesome. Again, I don't know how the Sooners let him go. You can't be in a position, even as a blue blood type school, even with Oklahoma has some really good young running backs, by the way. That was part of the issue. But you can't be in a position to let guys like that leave. He is really good. And I'm trying to think of a Badger comp. Like he's got some of the Corey Clement, like physicality between the tackles, the bowling ball, that he's a bigger than Clement. He's a little faster and more decisive than I thought he would look. Big time stock up on Tawee Walker. He's impressive. And I talked about it in yesterday's show. When he hits people, you hear people on the sideline say, ooh. And it's not, listen, the defensive players are not backing down. Hunter Wohler came up and laid a lick. Max Lofi came up. But Tywee's just a bull, and he's a bull with leverage. So, yeah, major stock up Tawee Walker. Both the freshman running backs stock up. I thought early this week, Darrion Dupree was kind of making the most noise. I thought yesterday Dilon Jones had a great practice, couple touchdowns in shorter drills, really, really smooth. So both of those running backs stock up, Dilon and Dupree. I was expecting quite a bit. And still, when you see him in person, you see the short-hairy quickness with Darrion Dupree, the ability to catch the ball, how fluid and smooth he is. And he's got enough size right now to compete. That was another question coming into with Dupree, how big he would be as a true freshman. He looks really good. And then Dilon Jones just looks like a 3-down, but future kind of workhorse type guy who can do a little bit of everything, really smooth, fast enough, great between the tackles, really good jump cut, good balance, finishes runs. He had a really nice one on the sideline. I think it might have been against Austin Brown. Don't quote me on that, but where he kind of lowered the shoulder. And again, as a true freshman, seeing that type of physicality is impressive. Stock up on all three of those running backs. And then I don't want to go overboard, but I kind of want to go stock up on Jackson Aker too. And the reason is, again, it's related to what kind of the perception of these players is and kind of what I thought coming into spring. I think there's been an incorrect assumption, and I've probably made that one too, that Aker's maybe not going to play really this year. He's going to play. So there's roles that he is in the backfield with Tawee Walker where they can kind of use him leading the way. I almost think of a fullback, but more in a shotgun set, like more of an H-back. They get him on the edges to block, but he runs with some power. He runs with some anger. His body looks a little better this year. He's fast. He's physical. He catches the ball pretty well. He can provide pass protection because he has that fullback background. It's a really, it's almost like I need to take the entire running back room and say stock up on that position because they're going to play. They have no shortage of options this year. And we didn't even see Ches, right? There's 5 guys, right? Ches, Tawee, the 2 freshmen, and Aker. I think they're all going to play. Well, I'm not sure which of the freshmen are going to get in that mix. But that's 5 options right there that I think you feel pretty good about. The biggest challenge might be Coach Spalding, just figuring out how do you divvy up these reps? How do you keep everybody happy? Coach Longo, how do you keep these players engaged while still throwing the ball like you want to do? Because there's quite a few receivers you want to feed. And I think we saw we saw the start of how they're going to try to figure some of that out, right? 3 running backs in the backfield. We saw a lot of that yesterday. The day before, we saw 2 running backs in the backfield. It's a way to get all of those pieces some reps. And you can do a lot of those formations, right? You can fake one way, come back the other way. There's some really interesting run. Apologize, my mic went out for a second. I think it's good now. In the comments, let me know if you can't hear me anymore. But I think my mic is good now. Looks like it's good. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot they can do out of that room. I thought stock up on a lot of the running backs. Let's go receivers. Stock up Chris Brooks. I've talked about it a couple times. He's just a different type of guy. Right? He's bigger. He's more physical. He kind of looks. He doesn't run. He doesn't play quite like Lance Kendricks, but he kind of looks like that type of guy. Like, just big, physical. They do a lot with him over the middle, right? Where he's just going to out physical a defensive back. He's going to get on the inside of him. He's got really strong hands. He's going to put his mitts up there and he's just going to snatch the ball. And if the ball comes into him, he catches it. He doesn't drop the ball. And all of his catches are in contact because he doesn't really separate, right? Because that's not his game. He's not a speed guy. He's not a short area quickness guy. He's not Tretch. He's not Pauling. He's not those things. So there's typically people on him, typically people in the vicinity, typically people hitting him, typically people being physical with them. And he's still, if he gets his mitts on it, he's going to catch it. So I thought he had a really good week of practice. Talking to some other people, they were impressed as well. I always like to kind of double check. Hey, this is what I'm seeing. What do you see? Chris Brooks is making a little bit of noise. It is a deep receiver room. So we'll see where he kind of fits into that. But I think situationally, he gives you something from a physical standpoint on the edges as a blocker. If you're trying to throw screens out there, he gives you something on 3rd and 7 if you just want a possession receiver to make a physical catch. I like him a lot. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to find a rotation. And then stock up CJ Williams. I thought this was a good week of practice for CJ. I really did. And this is kind of like that post-hype bump, right? He came in as this incredibly heralded receiver, and it didn't really come to fruition last year. He looks a little more physical this year, had a great clip on the sideline, caught a ball and dropped Rico with a stiff arm. Him and TVD had a lot of really nice hookups. He had a great one in the corner of the end zone on kind of a quick out route in red zone drills. I think that was against Forker where he held position. He might be in line for that boundary spot opposite Bryson Green. It might be kind of a Bryson Green, CJ Williams, and then Tretch and Pauling on those inside slot areas. I think he's going to have a better year this year. So that's my stock up for quarterback, running back, and receiver. We're going to take a quick break, come back, stock up on the defense line, linebacker, a couple of linebackers I think we really got to talk about. Stock up in the secondary. Continue talking about who made moves during this week of practice and who am I a little worried about. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Game Time. Listen, if you want to buy tickets, which a lot of us do because we want to go live life, let's go have some fun. Let's get out of the 9 to 5. Let's break free of the malaise of life. If you want to go do some of that, go check out Game Time. make it easy on yourself. Life is hard, right? We're all trying to compete with 13-year-olds in EA Sports, and we're mostly losing in that battle. We're all trying to figure out how the Bachelors are going to do this year. We're all trying to make it through this life, this stressful life that we all live. Don't take it buying more stressful. Go over to Game Time. It's the fastest, easiest place to buy tickets, cheapest, great inventory. You get panoramic views of the seats before you sit down, so you know exactly what's gonna be around there. Now, unfortunately, you can't see who's gonna be around there, but it can give you the next best thing, where you're at in the stadium, what those sidelines are gonna look at. Incredible inventory, anything you want to buy a ticket to, really, like sports, concerts, music, it's all there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download the app, create the account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, let's keep going here. Let's talk more stock up. Let's get some comments too, though. Mountain Grizzly says, thank you. Makes me feel like I'm there. Thank you, brother, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Robert Sorensen said, I got that Tretch money and I'm riding the fire guard train into the sunset. Guys, you guys are killing me with the guard stuff. I think we're going to have a good year this year. I really am. I really, really am. Curtis says, stock up the way Coach Spalding and Colton look at Ryan after he asks a question. I've been sneaking into not sneaking in. I've actually been invited. I've been able to go to some of the media stuff. And I asked Coach Spalding a question about Tawee and his run pass blocking. And Coach gives me it's like, because we had never talked before. And it's like that really quick thought of, is this guy going to ask a ridiculous question or not? And fortunately, the question was good and it all worked out. Smo says, Dylan Jones for Heisman 2025. He's really good. Dylan looks really, really smooth, man. Really, really smooth. Robert Sorensen says running backs' ability to block and be playmakers could take some of the pressure off the tight ends. That's a great point from Robert. Those guys. So tight ends, we're going to talk about we are going to get to stock down a little bit at the end of the show. We're going to talk about tight ends there. I think the running backs are going to be used, especially, and Nowakowski had some nice moments too, but especially guys like Aker, they can be used in ways that, outlets for quarterbacks, maybe hot pressure outlets, setting the edge, blocking a little bit. They can be used in some of the ways that the tight ends traditionally were at Wisconsin. And I think Aker is going to have a role in that. And then all the running backs look smooth and fluid catching the ball. They really do. And they do a lot of it. For all the gripes and all the frustration and the angst at times last year with Badger fans with the swing passes that a lot of times went to Braylon Allen and really weren't always super successful. There's that element of the offense isn't going anywhere. They throw a lot of passes to the running backs in the flats. A lot of smoke screens to the receivers. But I think these running backs are probably set up a little better to have success in that role than a Braylon Allen was. Okay, let's keep going. Stock up, offensive line. There wasn't a lot of stock up for me on the offensive line. And again, it's almost because I had pretty high expectations for that group. I think Nelson, Malman, I thought they looked good, but I expected them to. I think Renfro, the snapping looked good, but I expected it to. So to me, they kind of checked the box of this is what I expected, which is good because they're going up against a pretty athletic, long, rangy group of linebackers. And I thought they held their own. I thought they played well. They held their own. So to me, it's kind of, okay, that's what I expected. I want to go stock up in Derek Jensen, the freshman, getting some reps with the twos. This is a player who we had thought would be, I think he is still a little further off. I think he still is a redshirt guy, but it was nice to see him getting reps. Stock up Emerson Mandel. Struggled a little bit at times with speed, but playing tackle, not a spot a lot of people expected him. And he looked okay. He held his own. Again, for a true freshman playing with the twos, to be going up against some of those linebackers, to be going up against Anelu Lafayette, who's a really advanced pass rusher even as a freshman, he had some really moments. Emerson Mandel had a really nice block against Tackett Curtis on the edge, put him in the dirt a little bit. I was impressed. He has a really high ceiling. He's still kind of figuring out. You can tell in pass blocking because they didn't really do it in high school. And I still think he's probably more of a guard. You can tell that he's still finding his footing a little bit, but the physical tools are there. So I would say stock up on those guys. Let's go defensive line, a spot that I've had many worries about. And I would say Brandon Lane, stock up. Yeah, that is a big pickup there. That is a big pickup this offseason. He looks the part. A lot of the reps against the twos, but you can't teach 310, 315 pounds. He looks all of 310, 15, and it's not a sloppy 310, 315. Certainly, we've had people, you see some defensive linemen, they're 310, 320, but they really should be like 295. Brandon Lane looks like he should be 315. Moves really well, gets his hands up, disruptive, had several plays where he broke into the backfield either to break up a rushing attack or to flush the quarterback, which is, again, all you're asking for here, right? Get in and be disruptive. Be a guy who creates some havoc. Be a guy who creates some space. Be a guy who's difficult to handle. Be a guy that opens up lanes for the linebackers. Stock up Brandon Lane. That's a really good pickup by the staff this offseason. Stock up Dylan Johnson. Man, I don't know how much he's going to play this year. The future is bright with that guy. And you can see him just going through the individual drills, right? The footwork, the speed, the quickness. You talk about a player who carries 290, 295 pounds really well. That's Dylan Johnson. You can see the leverage coming off, like eating up some double teams against some of the 2s and 3s. He's going to be really good at Wisconsin. And again, my expectations were pretty high. And then you see him in person. You see him go through some of those drills. And you're like, yeah, he doesn't move like a 300-pounder. And you just start to project out what this guy could look like in 2 years, what this guy could look like with 2 years of Brady Collins, 2 years of coaching, 2 years of technique. He's going to be a monster. I think he's going to be really, really good. So stock up Dylan Johnson. Let's go linebacker room. Much like Tawee Walker, this one is stock up with like 7 exclamation points, 2 capital U's. You really want to pronounce the P. This is stock up. Anelu Lafayette. That dude looked really good. He looked really good. Again, there's some Herbig in his game. Low center of gravity. So you see the get off. The other again, yes, he's not going up against the 1s. He's going up against the 2s primarily. But he's also a freshman. He's a true freshman, just like they are, and he's eating them up. And it's not on them. He is a unique burst off the line of scrimmage, and then he plays with a really low center of gravity. It's kind of similar to I said Herbig, but if you go back to Chris Borland freshman year, the ability he had of playing really low and then utilizing bigger players' kind of height against them with that leverage, he has some of that too. He showcased a really wicked spin move, getting back on the inside when he was forcing the tackles to set up. Because when you're blocking in space against a guy like Lafayette, you have to kick step quickly. You have to get wide quickly as a tackle. Lafayette does a really good job of reading that, spinning back inside. He's just a nightmare on the edge. I think he's going to play this year. I think he's going to play because I think he's 240, and it's probably going to be a situational role. It's probably going to be a third and 12, and then we're in the third quarter, and some of the other guys have been on there for a long time. Now let's unleash Lafayette for a few snaps and just get some fresh electricity out there. But I was super impressed. And again, that's a guy I was really high on. That was a big recruiting win. That's a big time player. I stock up Lafayette. Stock up Tyler Jancy. So kind of a forgotten guy in the linebacker rotation, right? And some of this is because Chaney's been out, non-contact jersey. He hasn't been practicing. But starting to got some reps with the 1s, been playing with the 2s. I feel like this is a name nobody talks about. Really good high school film coming out of Illinois. His coach raved about him. Really physically well put together guy, and he looks even bigger now. Like, he looks big, physical now. And you talk to some of the offensive guys. I asked Jackson Aker, who's the hardest hitters on defense, on the linebackers? Who are the hardest hitting guys? It was Allegro and Jancy. And Aker's going up against all of them, right? He's going up against Lowry, Pius, Chaney. He's played against all those dudes. He said Jancy as the hardest hitter, him and Allegro. So I like what I see there. Probably not this year, right? Because you still got Janey, you still got Thomas. I think Tackett, they're going to try to work in more. You still have Allegro, but Jancy is right in that next wave, and he should be talked about more. I thought he looked really good, really physical. Not as much a coverage guy, but more that I'm going to come downhill. I'm going to rock a guard. I'm going to shut a fullback, and I'm going to be disruptive. Stock up there. Stock up Angel Toombs, the redshirt freshman, walk-on from in-state, Rufus King, Milwaukee. It's hard, right? Because there's so much depth at linebacker, and they're going to keep adding that. They got a couple more real dudes coming in, Brendan Ains and Mason Posa and all these guys coming in. He looked good, man. He got reps with the 2s, big frame, 6'5", 240, long, had a couple TFLs. I thought he moved pretty well. I thought he's physical. I thought Angel Toombs is definitely a PWO to keep an eye on. At receiver, Langdon Nordgood is another PWO I keep an eye on. He has a pretty unique frame, and I thought there were a couple moments he had really nice catches in coverage. Has, again, kind of that 6'4", 6'5" frame and some track background. I would put a pin in those 2 PWOs and say, okay, maybe. Let's go to cornerback, stock up. Xavier Lucas. And again, this was a player, man, on 2024 class. This is a player I was very high on going in, and then you see him out there, and it just confirms, check. And then you talk to players, like Nizer Forkran talked about him like he's the next coming. Now, let's see, right? Like he's still got to produce, but you ask Nizer Forkran what's special about Lucas, and he's like, well, it's the size, the speed, composure, the confidence, the technique, the ability, the physicality, the maturity. I'm like that's everything. Like everything's special about the kid. They're very high on Xavier Lucas, and inside the building, I think we're very high on him. Outside the building, he kind of checked that box. Nizer Forkran, stock up. Again, a player that I think we've heard offseason hype all year. You see him out there, and the Badgers. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, and we're going to do some stock down in a second. So I don't want to sound like everything's perfect. This team's winning a title. The Badgers might have two kind of number one-ish cornerbacks. And number one-ish is a subjective term. Like it's like in baseball, is an ace one of the 5 best pitchers in baseball, or does every team have an ace because that's every team's one, right? Like Forkran's not a top 5 pick in the draft type of a number one cornerback like Ohio State puts out every year. But they could have two dudes who really create problems. I thought his coverage all week was really, really tight. When they completed passes on Forkran, it was because it was a really good catch, a really good throw. So I was very impressed. I think seeing him play matches the hype that we've heard this offseason. Let's go safety, stock up, Zachman. Again, a player who I know Rajiv is really high on him, has talked about him, a few people, but it feels like people talk about Austin Brown. They talk about Kamoe Latu. They talk about Braden Moore, right? Because they kind of want that prototype. All Zachman does is make plays. I thought his second practice this week, the Tuesday one, was awesome. Or no, his Wednesday one. Sorry, the Wednesday one. He had a pick, had a couple of really nice tackles for losses. He's solid. He's in the right spot. He's a bit of a playmaker. I think he's more athletic than people give him credit for. So I'm going to go stock up Zachman. Okay, we'll take a quick break here, come back, and we're going to talk a little bit about some stock down stuff too, because it's never all perfect. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. All right, let's do a little stock down here. And this is more stock down. I want to be super careful with how we do this. It's not stock down on the player or the future. It's what we saw from the reps distribution based on what we thought the role they could have this year, if that makes sense. So one of the biggest battles that I was interested in, just from a purely like, how is this going to shake out standpoint? This is, again, we had Rasheed and Justin on the show. We were talking about this. It was quarterback number 3, because I think we all thought it was going to be Van Dyke, Locke, kind of in that order. I think that was the general consensus. And then who's that number 3? Is Cole LaCrue getting healthy? Is he going to be able to fight for that? Or is it going to be Mabry Metori, the freshman? It's Mabry. And this is the reality of college football. Like, I want every one of these dudes to succeed. This is no shots on anybody, but I don't know how LaCrue is going to get into this battle, because Mabry got 100% of those reps basically. And the 1 and 2 are secure. Mabry's a freshman. So I would say, like, if we were thinking about LaCrue being healthy, like finally getting healthy and fighting for that spot this year, I would say stock down on that. Let's go stock down in the running back room. This one's super hard because I thought Cade Yakimelli played well. Cade Yakimelli ripped off a couple runs. Cade Yakimelli has some physical skills. Cade Yakimelli can catch the ball. But you see, there's only so many reps, right? And when you see what Tawee did, and you see, Ches is coming back, you see what the freshman did, you envision the role for Acre. I'm just not sure where Cade fits into that mix. I think he's an athletic player, a good player. I'm not sure where he fully fits into that mix, though. Let's go receivers, some stock down stuff. There are a lot of hype, right? Maybe hype's the wrong term, but you go get Joseph Griffin, the Boston College transfer. He came a little later in the process, but you're excited about it because he's 6'3". He has Division I experience. He had 5 touchdowns 2 years ago. Could this be the guy who is that boundary receiver, that bigger physical receiver, that red zone guy we're looking for? He really didn't get any reps. A few of them here and there. Talked to a couple of people who were watching practice the week before and this week, and they all kind of said, yeah, I don't think it's going to play out this year. So we'll see. Again, these are snapshots in time. Next year, maybe one of these players goes on a run and bangs it out, and then they rise up the depth chart. But snapshots in time right now, I wouldn't count on Vernon Griffin getting a ton of reps this year, or at least in the beginning. I would say stock down on that. And then Quincy Burrows, a lot of non-contact jersey stuff. I think he's a little dinged up. Unfortunately, I think he needs these reps to compete. A very physically talented player, big player. He's fast, but you got to rep. you got to practice. And in the meantime, when you're not getting those reps, CJ Williams is balling out. Bryson Green looks really good, right? Chris Brooks might be the guy taking some of those reps because he's out there making plays in traffic and making catches. So unfortunately, I would say stock down there. Let's go to the tight end room. Now, they use Tucker Ashcraft a lot. He's a guy that physically gives them something. But Jackson Magana is the guy coming out. A lot of people are excited about maybe his potential. Maybe he can become kind of that pass-catching weapon. Really didn't see much there. Now, some of that might be situational, but mostly just kind of some sporadic reps with the twos. Didn't see them target him much. I don't think he's at the blocking level of some of the other guys. I would say stock down there if you're anticipating early returns from Jackson. Defensive line, Jamel Howard. I think we're still waiting. And the book is not written by any stretch, but I didn't see a lot this week, either from a reps distribution standpoint or kind of a standing out standpoint that I would say that I would come back and say, yeah, this is going to be a season where Jamel really fights into that 2 deep and gives you some of that depth on the inside that I think this team still needs. I don't think the defensive line is still where it needs to be to compete with the big boys in college football. Linebacker, I'd say Tackett Curtis, stock down a little bit. So I love Tackett Curtis's high school film. I still really like the concept of Tackett Curtis here. There's just some physicality things and athletic things he can do that are super unique. But he's missed a lot of time with injuries. He's still kind of coming back from what I don't think was a great experience at USC. I think he's still getting his feet under him. So again, under the lens of what do we expect this year from these players? What is some of the hype coming into practice? I don't think Tackett is going to give early returns necessarily on that. Nothing long-term. I'm not that stressed out because there's a lot of depth at linebacker. And I think Tackett's still getting his feet underneath him. And it looked a little bit like that. Linebacker, Kamoi Latu. Again, not getting out there, not repping. And then you see some of the other guys starting to step up. You see Zachman starting to step up. You see Austin Brown making plays. Some of it's just when other people rise, and this is true in all things in life, right? Like when somebody else's rise, somebody else kind of has to fall a little bit on the depth chart. And it's kind of that shift there. So that's what I would say on those players. Let's get some comments in here if anybody has anything. Muppy B says, great to hear Tawee is looking a beast. Yeah, he looks good, man. Mitch Ames, do we have another top running back room in the national, or one of the top running back rooms in the country? Man, I would have said no. And then you start to see what Walker can do, and you're going to mix Ches into that. I would say you probably do. Now, I don't know. It depends on what you're looking for, not from an NFL standpoint, but from what they can do this year and the different types of options they have in the depth there, it's got to be up there. Curtis Blaze says, heard Henry was getting some first-team reps. Yeah, Tyrell Henry looked good. Last couple of days, he looked good. He's definitely going to be in that punt return mix. That punt return mix looked like him, Tretch, and Vinny Anthony. And he looks quick. Like, he's a quick player. I'm just not sure from a receiver spot where he kind of fits into that mix. White Marlin says, defensive line and staff seem to have a chip on their shoulders for your defensive line takes. Stop it. They're not even listening to me. I don't even buy that. And it's not like I'm the only one questioning that, but that's a real concern. And I hope they do. At the end of the day, man, I'm just, and I know everyone here knows this, but I'm just a massive Badger fan. So if they ball out, nothing will make me happier. But I still just am not sure. And this isn't the show for that, but listen, Wisconsin moved the ball pretty well on the ground in practice against that front seven. And I don't necessarily feel like I'm going to do a show in the future about things I was worried about and if I feel better, worse, or the same about it. I don't necessarily feel better about our between the tackles rush defense after practice. I do really like Lane. Lane is a big time pickup, and Hills flashed too. Day 3, I thought Hills had some really nice moments. So there's definitely things to be excited about there. Hey, our guy Eilers, man, I love Ryan. He said midday show. Let's have a day. Let's go, buddy. David Holbrook, maybe I missed it, but that's burning discussion of Kevin Heywood playing with the ones. Heywood's gotten a lot of reps. Again, I didn't include him in stock up because I'm already pretty sky high on what he is and his level of development at this point. But yeah, I got a few reps with the ones, got a bunch of reps with the twos. Carries his weight great. I mean, he's a plus 300-pounder that looks like he's kind of carved out of an offensive line factory somewhere in Des Moines, Iowa. Like he really looks the part. Long, moves well. Huge future with Heywood. Now, potential is potential. Potential has to be realized. We all know that. But yeah, I that's a huge future there. Okay, let's keep going. Any other questions, thoughts? Jeffrey says, Fort Greene is basically Cromartie 2.0. I think Fort Greene's longer. I think he's a little more athletic. I'm trying to remember. Like Cromartie had moments for sure. Big time game against Minnesota, where he broke up a couple plays in the end zone. Like Cromartie was a good cornerback. I think Fort Greene is a higher upside guy than him, and maybe that's me being a creature of the moment. Because listen, you can play Cromartie. Cromartie was a Big Ten caliber corner, so maybe that's being creature of the moment. A little recency bias there is certainly possible. And I never saw practice with Cromartie, right? Like, so maybe that factors into it as well. But I think Fort Greene has a higher upside than him. And either says Fort Greene is taller and longer. Yeah, I think he's physically just a little better. Let's see if there's any more comments here. Jeffrey says favorite to win kick returner duties. He says he hopes it's Vinny. I would love it to be Vinny or Tretch. Like I want speedy guys getting reps. I want speedy guys getting the ball in their hands. Vinny can move. Like north and south, he's pretty angularly explosive. And then Tretch, like I'm going to be 100% in favor in whatever gets the ball in his hands more. So jet sweeps, receiver screens, putting him in motion and creating some havoc for the defense, stacking him up with Pauling, putting both on the same side of the field and making giving them both option routes, right, where they can break left or right, punt return, kick return, wildcat snaps, man, you name it, and I'm probably going to be in favor of that if the end result is getting the ball in Tretch's hands. So I would say Vinny, or I would say Tretch for the kick return duties. Let's see, White Marlin, you going to make the playoffs bet? I don't think we're going to make the playoffs. I don't know. I think this is like I'm higher on this team. Like I think this team is better than last year, but it's a really hard schedule. And I think a lot of teams have improved, right? I think Iowa has a real offensive coordinator now potentially. I think USC is a real defensive coordinator now potentially. Nebraska just got a 5-star quarterback, and regardless of how we feel about that, he could, if he hits, that's all they need, right? That a quarterback raises your stock by a couple games. Northwestern is coming off a pretty good year. Like I don't know. I think this team still has some holes, but I think it's gonna be more enjoyable to watch. I think there's more athletes, and it wouldn't shock me. Like it would not shock me. That's what I would say. Okay, let's wrap it there. You guys, incredible as always. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching live. If you're going to watch later on the podcast, if you're going to watch on YouTube, whatever it is, thank you so much for tuning in, being part of this. I appreciate the heck out of y'all. When you're done here, go check out Locked On College Football, NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment. All the best and biggest college football news is on our streaming Locked On College Football channel. Go check that out next after you tune in here on Wisconsin, and we will talk later.